The truth is that many of us have never given our own safety a significant thought when it came to running. We run during the day and in well-populated areas, doing enough to feel safe. But as more and more women are murdered while running, the grim truth that the next one could be one of us stares back at us in the mirror. And we have to face the facts. We are not safe while doing something we love. The thing that brings us joy, confidence, and a sense of worth could be the very thing that gets us murdered or missing. I'm going to tell you these stories because every runner matters. Every single woman who laced up her shoes and didn't come back alive deserves to have her story told. And to every woman still heading out the door, taking extra precautions to try to ensure she comes home, I see you. I am you. This is Girl Gone Running, a Tragedy with a View series about murdered and missing runners. I am your host, Kayla. Welcome back. Welcome back to Girl Gone Running, a Tragedy with a View series, and as this first season is starting to come to a close, don't worry, there's still a couple more episodes, but I want to take a quick moment to thank everyone for joining me and holding some compassion for runners who are out on the roads and trails, just doing what they enjoy and chasing down their goals that they have created for themselves. I have started working on season 2, and while many of the runners in this first season have had the crimes against them go unsolved for many years, if not decades, and are still unsolved today, that is not the case for season 2. Many of these stories that will be coming up have been solved, and there are also some wild stories and these crazy connections, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that and telling the next group of stories, but that won't be until the fall at the absolute soonest. In the meantime, the tragic reality to many people is that we are not 100% safe. And this is highlighted in each and every episode I do here on Tragedy with a View. Other people may be the culprits in many crimes, but animals, storms, and just outright unfortunate circumstances and being in the wrong place at the wrong time impact many lives. And today, for Karen, she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and her life was brutally and cruelly ended because of it. Now, the actions in this episode are particularly heinous, so I'm going to ask you to listen with care. Karen Lynn Stiles was born on July 28, 1972, and was an incredible person inside and out. She was happy and beautiful, with a smile of kindness that always reached her eyes. Karen was a well-loved person. She had great grades through high school and into college and participated in honors programs, clubs, and athletics. She helped to develop a program for disabled people. She was on the dean's list and worked 3 jobs throughout college. When she wasn't in school, she was working at a girls' camp and was certified in whitewater rafting. In 1994, Karen had recently graduated from Western Carolina University at the age of 22 years old, receiving a bachelor's degree in therapeutic recreation. All through her time at the university, she ran at the nearby Pisgah National Forest. And like many, she rarely felt unsafe while running here. She got a job working for a state-run boys' wilderness camp in South Carolina, which was expanding to be able to host girls as well, in which she would be helping to develop this new program for the girls. Now, Pisgah National Forest is a vast woodland located in western North Carolina, so she was going to be leaving her home state to travel to South Carolina to work in this new position. Pisgah National Forest is renowned for its rugged mountain landscape, cascading waterfalls, and diverse ecology. It spans hundreds of thousands of acres that create a perfect natural backdrop for outdoor adventure. While it is popular for hiking and camping, it is the network of trails that make it a favorite spot among runners as well. For those who hit the pavement, or rather the trails, Pisgah offers a range of running routes that cater to different levels of endurance and technical challenge. Many of the trails could test your stamina with steep climbs and rocky descents, all while treating you with panoramic views of the surrounding forests and valleys. For instance, the Hawksbill Mountain Trail is celebrated among runners for its short but challenging uphill that leads you to a stunning 360-degree view of the vistas in the wilderness. Running on these trails is not just a test of physical endurance, it's a way to be able to connect yourself with nature and navigate through the winding forest paths and then occasionally cross the babbling streams and just really take your passion for a activity that you enjoy and combine it with a location that is just stunning. Other popular running routes include trails that lead from waterfalls like the one near Graveyard Upper Falls and Catawba Falls, where the natural beauty of the cascading water adds an extra element of refreshments to a running workout. On October 31st, 1994, Karen did as she usually did, heading out for a run in this park, which was only a few miles away from her parents' home. She again, did this regularly. This was one of her favorite places to run, and quite honestly, I don't blame her. She parked in a parking lot near Hard Times Road and set out for her run. It was common for her friend, Jennifer Olive, to run or bike with her, but on this particular day, Jennifer wasn't able to make it, so Karen decided to go out on her own. She was supposed to work at 2 p.m., which is why she decided to go run in the morning, but when 2 o'clock rolled around and then the time continued to roll and Karen did not arrive at work, others began to worry. When she was reported missing and that the last known location of her was in Pisgah National Forest, several dozen people showed up at the park to help look for her. By 10 p.m., there were 60 people searching for her, with their biggest concern being that she had or would develop hypothermia since the temperature had dropped. That morning, the weather had been comfortable enough that she set out in a t-shirt and shorts, but as the day wore on and the sun set, the temperature would drop into the 20 degrees Fahrenheit or -7 degrees Celsius. As the search began, the first thing to be located was her car in the parking lot that evening. And strangely, her keys were located on the trail almost 0.2 of a mile from the parking lot. It is impossible to tell if she was coming or going when she lost her keys, but they were definitely the keys that belonged to her car. With this discovery, a ground and air search was called, but nothing immediately came to light. Searchers and scent dogs were able to locate hotspots along her running route, but still, Karen was not found. Finally, on November 13th, 2 weeks later, a bloody t-shirt was found by wildlife officer Tim Sisk near Lake Powhatan, which was in the Blue Ridge Parkway region that they had been searching. This, of course, led to further searches that led to, again, nothing. It wasn't until nearly a month after Karen went missing that a man who was deer hunting in the area made a gruesome discovery. At 1:30 p.m. on November 25th, 1994, Karen's body was finally located roughly a mile from where her car had been parked. She was naked, duct taped to a small tree down an embankment, and the searchers had actually come through this area multiple times previously, but this should tell you exactly how dense the foliage was. The hunter had to literally walk up to find her, which was probably startling for him as well as investigators when they got to the scene. At this location, they found the duct tape wrapper, a pornographic magazine, and a .22 caliber rifle casing. The autopsy that was performed confirmed that Karen had died from a single gunshot wound to the head, and the autopsy also found that she had 10 stun gun wounds on her body. 9 of which were within 6 inches of her pubic area. Clearly, this was a sexually motivated crime that turned into a murder. But was murder the original intent? Who did this, and why would they do something so violent out in the middle of the woods? Luckily for investigators, the duct tape wrapper contained the name of the brand on it that was only sold at their nearby Kmart store. So that's where they went first. They had a product, or some products, since at one point Kmart, if there are any that still exist out there, once sold guns and ammunition. There, they asked for the receipts from the days prior to Karen going missing, and after searching through hundreds of receipts, they found one. On October 28th, 3 days before Karen went missing, a purchase of a box of .22 caliber ammo, a .22 caliber rifle, duct tape, a flashlight, and batteries were all purchased. The ATF form that was completed with the purchase of the rifle gave a name, and that name was Richard Allen Jackson. Richard was a, by all means, average person. He was local to the Pisgah National Forest, where he was a dishwasher at a restaurant. He was a husband and a father of 2. Nothing about him screamed that anything was off about him. When the Buncombe County Sheriff's Department questioned him on December 20th, he waived his Miranda rights and offered to answer their questions. But when they asked him directly, "What did you do with the gun you killed Karen Stiles with?" he shut up and asked for a lawyer. 3 days later, their questioning would continue, but this time Richard confessed, and the details still haunt investigators today. Richard explained that he was in the Bent Creek parking lot when Karen arrived at about 8 a.m. on October 31st. He watched her as she stretched, and then when she set off down the trail, he grabbed his stun gun, the duct tape, and the pornographic magazine, put those items in his pocket, and then loaded the rifle and head off down the trail behind her. When Karen was returning to the parking lot, she started to run past Richard, and that's when he stepped in front of her and pointed his gun at her. Immediately, she thought that she was being robbed. She had put her car key in her shoe, and at this point, she reached down to grab the key and explained that she had money in her car. But that's not what Richard was after. Instead, he placed duct tape over her mouth and her eyes and led her away into the dense woods. She begged him not to hurt her before he covered her mouth and her eyes with tape, and when the tape came loose, she again started pleading with him. He taped her mouth shut a second time, and here he tied her to a tree, raped her, and used the stun gun on her, once above her left breast, and the rest on her private parts. When he was done with that part of it, he stepped away from her and grabbed his pornographic magazine and began to masturbate. But then his plan to let her go changed. The tape again came loose, and when it slipped from her mouth the third time, she started screaming for help. In a panic, or at least he claims, he grabbed the gun and shot her once in the head, and then he fled the scene. A search of his home and car found the magazine, the box of ammunition that had some missing, the stun gun, the flashlight, and a black ninja outfit. Upon his confession, Richard was charged with first-degree kidnapping, first-degree rape, and first-degree murder, and was sentenced to death on November 22nd of 1995. Now, I want to take a moment to mention that, and this is all speculation on my part, and what I want to mention is that I don't really think that he intended to let her go. Based on how he reacted when she started to scream for help, he could have just ran at that point. Karen fought for her life, and there is no doubt in my mind that she would have told others what happened to her. She saw him in broad daylight, he raped her, he left evidence behind, and in my mind, he had to have known that he would get caught sooner or later if he let her go. This does not excuse his violent acts, but it annoys me that whenever someone commits a crime and then it's like, oh, I didn't mean to, it's almost their way of trying to get out of whatever damage that they caused. Like, instead of just taking full accountability for the actions that you committed against other people, which a lot of times when you're like, yeah, I did these things, people go easier on you because you're admitting that you did them. And while you're not absolving someone of the wrongs that they did, there's a lot of evidence that you can work with people who have admitted to all of the things that they've done and, in a sense, rehabilitate them and give them the help that they need. That's getting into a much deeper topic on mental health and prison systems and things that we're not getting into in this particular episode. But there is support there for the people who are willing to admit the wrongdoings that they've committed and are willing to work towards being a better person. If you are constantly saying, I didn't mean to do that part of it, that doesn't really give anybody anything to work with to helping you find the support that you need. And I'll get off my pedestal now. Again, that is all speculation on my part. I don't know that he truly didn't mean to kill her, but you likely will never convince me otherwise. To further annoy me, though, and I hope you as well, Richard then took the gun that he shot Karen with back to Kmart and got a full refund. And we might want that to be the end of these annoying things, but alas, it's not. Richard was adopted by a man who had connections, as he was a real estate developer and a very prominent one at that. He used his money and connections to hire a lawyer who used the fact that Richard's confession came after he said he wanted a lawyer, but before a lawyer was with him, as a reason to seek a new trial, and this was granted on April 3rd, 1998. On March 3rd of 2000, Richard was sentenced to 31 years, minus the 5 years that he had already served for second-degree murder and kidnapping. The lesser charges were sought because without the confession, the investigators didn't really have a ton to go on. The bullet fragments were only a partial match for the cartridge that was found at the scene, and because everything had been left out in the elements, fingerprints had been washed away. And at the time, his lawyer thought that that was it. It was done. But it was not. And the information continued to be learned would be damning. Richard's adoptive sister often didn't feel safe around him. Sally, his adoptive mother, stated that when he came into their home at 5 years old, he was already using inappropriate language, and by 7 he was masturbating, and by 13 he was depressed and suicidal. Richard met his wife, Donna, and they married within days, and he was just having problems with hygiene. And while helping Richard and Donna with financial problems, she, Sally, his adoptive mother, found that Richard was racking up the charges calling phone sex lines. And then, the day after Karen went missing and was murdered, Richard was hospitalized for trying to kill himself. Though, when you watch the tapes back, the man in the room with investigators seemed confident, intelligent, and even playful. He understood where the conversation was going, and he spoke about how he needed to support his wife and his children. Very different from the man that his mother painted him to be. Couple this with the fact that many in the community called him a good and loving husband and father, you can plainly see the attempts that Sally was making for the prosecution to go easy on her son. On November 6, 2000, a federal prosecutor charged Richard with 1 count of using a firearm during and in relation to a violent crime, specifically with murder, kidnapping, and aggravated sexual assault. And he was, again, found guilty and given the death penalty. There are also theories for Richard being responsible for 2 other murders that have been unsolved, those being of Beverly Sherman, who was 17 and shot in the head on January 20th, 1987, and Pamela Michelle Murray, who was 23 and was shot on February 14th, 1987. Both of these murders were also on secluded and wooden trails. For years, Richard was on death row in an Indiana penitentiary, but Richard was one of the 37 federal death row inmates who the former President Joe Biden commuted to now serving life without parole. So he is now spending his days behind bars, which doesn't feel like a good enough of a punishment in my opinion. He stole the life of this courageous, beautiful, and bright young woman, not just from her, but also from her friends and her family, and the bright future she undoubtedly had. And he did this for sexual gratification. And the murder that followed, while I believe it was always the intent, he claims was just a moment of panic. That doesn't dismiss that he actually took the actions and ended this woman's life. Thank you for listening to this, again, short story. We will talk next time. Bye. What is life without close calls with disaster? Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow the podcast to be the first to hear the now weekly episodes. Join our subscription on Patreon, Apple, or Spotify today and immerse yourself in the haunting beauty of the great outdoors. For around $4 a month, you'll get exclusive access to the first episode of each month and early access to all other episodes, showcasing the morbid and mysterious side of nature. Please reach out with story requests, and if you have your own story, please email tragedywithaview@gmail.com for a chance to have your story featured on a later episode. Again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.